Erin, I couldn't wait for you. I have incredible news. Sit down and listen, but promise you won't get mad at me. A month ago, I met the love of my life, Josef, and yesterday I figured out I'm pregnant. Erin stared at me. She obviously wasn't expecting this. Well, I understand her. I just hope she won't get offended by me hiding my happiness from her. She drained a jar of water near her in a few seconds. Girl, are you okay? She nodded uncertainly, and then the floor pulled from my feet. I barely kept balance by clutching the table. Erin said she met Tim about the same time I met Josef, and a week ago she found out she had a bun in the oven. For a minute we stared at each other in silence and then came to our senses and hugged. Wow! Our babies are of same age. We'll walk with them together. They'll go to the same kindergarten, same school, and then they'll go to the same uni and we'll be besties. We both felt the world fell off our shoulders. For an hour we excitedly discussed our boyfriends. Wow, they have so much in common. And only then we recalled we hadn't still shown their pics to each other. I showed my phone desktop to Erin. Look, Josef is always with me, wherever I go. Suddenly Erin's face whitened. She seemed about to fall from her chair if it wasn't for the table again. Without a word, she showed me her phone. On the screen there was Josef. Only she called him Tim for some reason. What the... How could that be? In a moment, we both rushed to the doors and got stuck there. Each of us tried to go out first. Stop, Erin! Let's talk it all over. Being nervous is contraindicated to the both of us. We returned to our table and talked long. So we found out Josef was leading a double life and had fake dogs. He was an artist for me and a chef for Erin. There were similar traits, but we had to admit he was a genius of acting, knocked us both up and going to live in both families. My breath was short of anger. I clenched my fists so fiercely I even damaged my skin with my nails. We must punish him and expose his lies. We needed a plan, and it was ready soon. Josef was about to have the first exhibition of his paintings. He said it would change our life dramatically and we'd never need to worry about money. Oh dear, if only you weren't such a jerk, it would be all fine. But now, wait for a surprise. We bought a couple of jars of paint in a housekeeping store and needed to get it to the gallery. I pretended I was a delivery girl and said I brought some details for the exposition. But the guard asked to open the box. No! I started opening it with a trembling hand when Erin entered. She played ill and asked some water from the guard. He said I could pass. Phew! While Erin played the comedy, I splashed the paint on the paintings chaotically. Get some, Josef. This is for the broken heart and your treachery. It hurt so much. Tears were running from my eyes, but I went on. Erin and I came to the exhibition first and surely took cover. I couldn't wait for Josef to come. Go, look at your works. Suddenly he appeared. His face first grew pale, then green. He swayed and lost his senses. There you go. Later I texted him I was at my parents' place. It was about time to pick the chef operation. He'd developed a special menu for the opening. It needed to be spoiled. We knew Tim, aka Josef, was occupied getting out in the exhibition, so we went to the restaurant calmly. It wasn't working, but we banged on the door until a manager came out. We begged him to let us enter for a tour, saying we planned to rent the restaurant for a party right after the opening and pay nicely. So we got inside. While I was studying the design, Erin asked to use the loo. She needed to find the specialties cards and change everything in those. She was absent for long, and the manager got nervous. He started going toward the loo, and I had nothing but tell him Erin was suffering from terrible constipations. He nodded empathically. It worked. But finally Erin came back and the manager gave us 2 invitations for the opening of the restaurant. Great! We'll see Joseph's shame ourselves. The opening had lots of guests. Just as we took a table, we were offered to try a specialty. Sure, bring whatever you like. Erin asked me to turn, and I stupefied. That was Adam Platt, the famous restaurant critic. The future of this restaurant and the chef was entirely in his hands. Game over. Sure, that's the end of our boyfriend and his chef artist career. This serves him right. In half an hour, Adam got his dish. He took a bite and froze. Seemed it worked. He was about to spit it out. The critic moved his plate away and went to the mic. Everyone went silent. Strain was in the air. Adam opened his mouth, but we heard nothing. The mic was switched off. Don't worry, mister. We'll say everything for you. The chef and the author of those awful dishes is a liar. He leads a double life. My friend and I are pregnant from him, and he carries on with each of us using a fake passport. Then a bewildered Josef appeared, and in a second another Josef showed from the restaurant hall. What? This can't be! Why are there 2 of you? Josef from the hall said it was his twin, whom he wanted me to meet. I felt like struck by lightning. What have we done? The critic cleared the air. He said he never got involved in others' lives and only valued the dishes, and they were awesome. What? The air filled with applause and bravo shouts. I felt ill, swayed and nearly fell. Josef caught me and whispered to my ear, all the paintings were bought by the same collector, and I had the right for half of the money, as he got who did all the splashing right away. How true is the saying, beware of ill and pregnant ones. Erin and I nearly ruined our happiness, and we're still ashamed of all that, but it was a happy ending after all. Like the video, subscribe and give us a like. Support our channel. Thank you.
I was so happy to finally meet Pete's parents. We were already approaching the house and his parents met us on the threshold. When I got a little closer, I could see their faces. Oh my god, they were the very people for whom I agreed to become a surrogate mother and bear their child. Of course, Pete didn't know anything. I had to do this to pay for my younger sister's treatment. Milana needed an emergency kidney transplant. The doctors promised to do their best. But I had to find the money. Our parents had long been dead. There was no one else to help. But the amount of money was huge. Where could I get that much? I was desperate. I spent all day looking out for the jobs and suddenly came across an ad finding a surrogate mother for an elderly couple. A lot of money was offered for this. It should be enough. I got tested, went through some procedures, and very soon, the doctor said, "You are pregnant." I couldn't believe it. I'd done it, but I was willing to do anything to save my sister. When my parents were gone, we were all alone and promised to help each other and stay together. I received a large amount in advance and immediately took the money to the clinic. I didn't tell my boyfriend Pete about anything. I was afraid he would leave me right away, so he didn't notice. I had to lie that I was going out of town for a year, preparing for college. It seemed he believed it. Pete was my first love. I wanted to marry him, and now he introduced me to his parents. It was so exciting. So much for an acquaintance. Who would have thought that I was carrying a child for them? In a panic, I told Pete that I got food poisoning, turned around and ran home. Suddenly the phone rang. It was Pete. I prepared for the worst, but he said that he understood that it had to be exciting to meet the parents of the future husband. Then he added that probably today was not the best option to get acquainted. They recently had a big fight with him because he always hung out until late, and his parents were worried and slept badly. After that, Pete offered to help me move out of town, but I insisted that I could handle it myself. The next day, I moved all my things to the country house. As soon as I unpacked, I felt like I already missed Pete, but I checked myself. As long as he didn't find out about my pregnancy, it was the only way I could save our relationship. I had just laid down on the sofa with my book when the doorbell rang. Who was it? In my confusion, I opened the door and saw Pete with a huge suitcase. Pete said he had understood that he wanted to live with me and he wouldn't disturb my getting ready for college. I didn't know what to say. Any girl in my position would have been happy, but I was terrified. He would soon find out about my pregnancy. Nervous, I tried to say that he would be bored here. There was no clubs, no parties, but Pete said not to worry. His friends would be able to come by car. And tonight, there was going to be the first party in honor of housewarming. I was ready to cry. But I decided to tell Pete to go to town right after the party. I needed to be here alone. When the guests were assembled, Pete offered the drink to the hostess. All eyes turned to me. I could barely contain my excitement. I was not allowed to drink alcohol. Nervous, I asked for some water. Pete impatiently responded that he hadn't noticed my craving for a healthy lifestyle before. Then Archie, his best friend, came up to me. I'd only seen him a couple of times before, but I knew everyone thought he was a good guy. And Archie had water in his glass too. He said that for a good mood and fun, you didn't have to drink. But then Pete chimed in and said he knew how to keep me from moping. He brought my favorite Indian food with him. But the smell of the curry made me feel sick, and I immediately ran to the toilet. When I got back, Pete said angrily, "What's wrong with you?" I hesitated and he just turned around and went back to his guests. This was definitely not the time to talk about how I wanted to be alone. Pete was already angry with me, but the right moment to send Pete off didn't come. As days went by, my stomach continued to grow and my hormones turned my mood into a roller coaster. One morning, I woke up in a terrible state. My legs were swollen and it hurt to touch my breasts. And then I saw a missed message on my phone. It was from Pete. "Don't forget, it's my parents' wedding anniversary. Call is at 7 p.m. I hope this time the acquaintance will happen." Damn. I promised to go there. Now I definitely couldn't get away with it. So I needed to make sure they didn't recognize me. In desperation, I put on an old stretch-out sweater. I tied a handkerchief over my head and put on sunglasses. Pete came back and glared at me. Was I going to wear this? But I hastily replied that there was no time to change. Pete's parents were looking at each other strangely all through dinner. Did they recognize me after all? And in the end, his mother said that they had good news. Soon, they would have a child. Pete was taken aback. He didn't understand how this was possible at her age. But his mother stammered out that they had found an excellent surrogate mother and she was already carrying his future brother or sister. So they didn't realize it was me. And then Pete remarked with a chuckle that only idiots would agree to carry someone else's child for money. What did he understand? I screamed that he was wrong, and barely holding back my tears, I ran out into the street. Pete caught up with me and told me that he was finally tired of my whims. "You know, we'd better separate and take a break from each other," he said. What? Pete added that he wanted to stay with his friend Archie, the guy from the party, for a week. It hurt me to hear that, but maybe it was even better. Because if we broke up, Pete wouldn't see my stomach grow. At home, Pete packed up his things and left immediately. Archie was waiting for him outside the house. I went to take a bath to relax. Then I heard a noise in the hallway. Was Pete back? All my things were in the bedroom. He was going to see my stomach. I threw on a robe and decided to sneak into the living room. Holding my breath, I tried to move as quietly as possible, but I could hardly move my swollen legs. And then I saw Archie, that friend of Pete's, standing in front of me, stunned. He awkwardly explained that Pete had forgotten his t-shirt and asked him to pick it up so he wouldn't have to see me. He looked down at my stomach. It was perfectly visible under the robe. Hell, he was going to tell Pete now. I felt dizzy with fear, and I started to fall. Archie immediately ran to me and helped me sit down on the sofa. Tears welled up in my eyes. "Archie, I didn't mean to deceive anyone." And then I told him that I was carrying someone else's child to save my sister. After that, Archie stared at one point for a long time and was silent. I shouldn't have laughed. But then he said that the words had made him shiver. He said that if something happened to his loved one, he would also do everything to help. Then Archie noticed that my legs were very swollen. He said that when his mother was pregnant with his little brother, he often massaged her, and he offered to help me. I was taken aback, but agreed. My legs really hurt wildly. And just as Archie started massaging me, I heard, "What's taking Archie so long?" And suddenly Pete was in the room. In a rage, he shouted that he wasn't the least bit surprised that I was already cheating on him. "Pete, wait! You got it wrong!" I thought the world had collapsed. What would happen now? I kept calling Pete for the next week, but it seemed he banned me. I was in a terrible state, but I knew that I needed to pull myself together, at least for the sake of my sister Milana. I tried to get out of bed, and then I heard footsteps downstairs. Pete? But it was Archie. He brought me a whole bag of fruit. I asked him about Pete. Was he still mad at me? Then Archie took my hand and told me that I didn't need Pete. Everything would be fine and Archie would take care of me. But Pete just got it wrong. I didn't cheat on him. I was only carrying a baby for my sister, and it had been so long since I had visited her in the hospital. And suddenly Archie said, "Then what are you waiting for? Let's go." I was sad to think that Pete had never been so interested in her. Pete would always say, "You need to switch," and invite me to another party. I agreed, and Archie and I went to the hospital, and only when I entered the room, I saw that my little sister finally came to her senses. But the doctor, standing next to Milana's bed, told me not to be too happy. Milana's condition was unstable, and the new organ might not establish, but the main thing was, she was already awake. Archie and I visited Milana almost every day. Everything seemed to be going well. She was rapidly getting better. At first, I was a little worried about how my sister would accept Archie, but it seemed that they quickly got along. They spent hours together discussing comics and drawing superhero makeup. I was so happy. I was surprised to see that I seemed to be getting attached to Archie too. We were on our way back from the hospital one day, and Archie asked me to stop by for dinner at a cafe. I hesitated because this was Pete's favorite place. I didn't know what to do, but I thought the whole Pete thing was in the past, and I agreed to go there anyway. As soon as we ordered, Archie, embarrassed, said that he had been very fond of me for a long time. I was confused, but Archie added that there was no way he could admit it. Because of Pete, I felt my cheeks flush. And at that moment, I saw Pete enter the cafe. He had his arm around some blonde girl. How dare he? Then I got a message on my phone. It was from the hospital. The doctor wrote that the kidney still did not establish, and Milana urgently needed a new donor. I tried to get up, and suddenly I felt that my water seemed to break. The ground dropped away under my feet again, and I fell into the darkness. I woke up in the hospital. Archie was nowhere to be found, and neither was the baby. What about Milana? God, what's going on? But then the door swung open, and Pete's parents came in, cheering, clutching a small baby bundle to their chest. The doctor also handed me some kind of superhero badge. It was Milana's favorite badge. What did it mean? The doctor said that my sister had already recovered from the second surgery, and even asked to pass me this badge as a sign of gratitude. I didn't understand anything. We made it? When did they find a donor? The doctor looked at me in surprise and said that it was my friend who gave his kidney. Archie? The doctor looked at the chart and nodded. Tears streamed down my cheeks. A month later, Milana, Archie, and I went to the ocean. I looked at the waves and thought how great it was when the difficulties were in the past. And now there was a new, happy life ahead of the three of us. I turned to Archie and said, "Thank you, Archie. You're my superhero." Milana smiled cheerfully. By the way, the girl I gave birth to was named Milana. We sometimes visit her with the whole family. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you.